I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
The
More
You
No
Podcast.
Today I want to discuss existential crises, an existential crisis audit, as well as how to handle existential crises, all shared in Dr. Phil's book, Real Life. No matter who you are or how old you are, you've likely gone through an existential crisis or could be going through an existential crisis in the future. Because of this, it's vital to understand what an existential crisis is, be able to assess if you're going through an existential crisis, as well as having awareness surrounding how to handle the existential crisis. So with all this being said, I first want to define what an existential crisis is, then go through Dr. Phil's existential crisis audit, as well as providing some of the things that Dr. Phil suggests that you do if you're going through an existential crisis. And I'm now going to start by defining what an existential crisis is. So an existential crisis or existential anxiety can be defined as a fancy name for the age-old search for meaning in life. And it's taken from the phrase, the reason for existence. An existential crisis can be triggered by an event, or it may come on after years of wandering aimlessly in the world. It can also happen at any age. It most commonly happens halfway through life and is known as a midlife crisis. Nowadays, it's becoming more and more common to have an existential crisis in your younger years, though, whether it be as a teenager or in your 20s. And what this all ultimately is a deeply rooted pain that largely comes from failing to make sense of or find purpose in a world that sometimes just seems like nonsense. And so now that we understand what an existential crisis is, I now want to go through Dr. Phil's existential crisis audit. It helps you figure out if you may be experiencing an existential crisis. So the audit is a series of 10 descriptions of specific thoughts and feelings that should be responded to in 4 ways. The first is with a never, meaning these emotions or thoughts have not been present or you've not been aware of them. The next is occasionally, meaning that you have been aware of them, but they have not interfered with your life as it is. The next way to respond is with a significantly, and this is if you have experienced these emotions or thoughts every day, and your social relationships, personal quality of life, or work has been significantly influenced by them. And the final form of response is severely, meaning you have been severely limited in how you can embrace your present relationships, personal life, or work in the same attitude. So I'm now going to go through Dr. Phil's existential audit. Number 1, I'm worried that I have a set number of years left in my life, and I have yet to truly start living. Next, number 2 is I realize that I have a special mission in life, yet I don't know what it is, and have no clue how to discover it. Next, number 3 is I'm depressed about the things I promised myself that I'd do but I haven't done. From there, number 4 is I find myself worrying what life is supposed to be about or who I'm supposed to be. After that, 5 is if I achieved everything I set out to do, I wonder what importance it would really accomplish for anyone. Next, number 6 is I doubt whether my life is worthwhile. Then number 7 is I'm examining the values that I live by, and wonder how I could know the truth of life. Number 8 is then I wonder who I am, and what would be left of me if I had no name or family background. Next, number 9 is I wonder why we exist and why we are here. Finally, number 10 is I wonder if I could, what I would choose as my name, my culture, or my family. And now that we've gone through it, I want to explain how to score the audit. If you checked mostly never or occasionally, it's unlikely that you're experiencing an existential crisis. If you checked severely 4 or more times, you may be experiencing an existential crisis. If you checked significantly at least 5 times, or severely up to 4 times, it's likely that you're dealing with moderate but significant levels of existential crisis. And lastly, if you check significantly 5 times, you may be dealing with some temporary anxiety related to integration of behavior into your core values and self-authenticity. And now that we've gone through Dr. Phil's existential audit, I now want to go through his tips for what to do when you're going through an existential crisis or facing existential anxiety. The first is to identify de-stressing activities that enhance self-care. It's extremely important to figure out ways to strengthen coping skills. You should also focus on creative, constructive activities that enhance self-worth. Going through an existential crisis or existential anxiety can be destructive towards your self-worth. You should also focus on expressing interest in others. Focusing on being present with others will help. You should also break a sweat. The feeling of crisis or being stuck can always be improved by the chemical enhancement that comes from working out. You should also explore forms of therapy, and these are not just with a therapist, but also things that you can do personally, such as meditation, visualization techniques, or self-hypnosis. You should also learn to breathe correctly. Doing so will help you stay calm and mindful. You should also focus on changing your internal dialogue. A lot of the reason why you're going through an existential crisis or existential anxiety is due to a poor internal dialogue, and by focusing on changing the way you think, it will help with coping with the existential crisis or anxiety. And finally, Dr. Phil thinks you should try journaling. Doing so will help get rid of all those thoughts surrounding the existential crisis or anxiety. It's important to understand what an existential crisis is, as well as to be able to assess if you're going through an existential crisis. And if you are going through an existential crisis, it's great to understand Dr. Phil's tips of what to do to get through it. And all of this is important because if you want to craft a life of significance, you must be able to get through whatever existential crisis or anxiety that you're going through. Existential crisis and anxiety is common for humans to go through, but those who craft a life of significance get through it.
I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
The
More
You
No
Podcast.